Hey everyone, and welcome to Ramblin' Reviews, where we analyze different types of media and/or their cultural relevance. My name's Christian, and this is The Amazing Spider-Man, issue number 7. Here we're going to have the return of the Vulture, with this story written, of course, by Stan Lee and illustrated by Steve Ditko. Now, this issue actually opens with the kind of a little recap of what happened between Vulture and Spider-Man in issue number 2. A lot of comics, even still to this day, do this, where they will retell the events of what happened the last time characters met or something like that in an issue, at the beginning of an issue like this. So, it's one of those things where essentially Vulture is kind of reminiscing about the situation, and the narrator is, informing us about, how they fought, and Spidey took him down with a anti-magnetic inverter and things of that nature. Now, since then, Vulture is actually in prison, as this mentions, and the narrator makes note that he was such a model, a model prisoner, and essentially what the cops don't realize here, they're thinking, oh, look, he's really working hard. But the whole time he's been developing this new flight tech for him to, go back to being the Vulture. So he has this whole thing where effectively, and he mentions that it's not as powerful as the other one was. However, he's still able to fly enough. And during one of their recess hours, he's able to actually fly over the wall and escape prison that way. Where from this point, he decides to get a new hideout. And we'll see the hideout later, but it's essentially going to be this abandoned silo that he decides to hide out in and plot his next evil plan, so to speak. Meanwhile, we have Peter, Flash, and a bunch of other people back at his high school, sort of playing volleyball. Flash just tosses Peter a ball, and he's like, "Come on, see if you can throw that at me. If you can handle this." And of course, the joke is Peter's such a wimp because it's a volleyball. Like, obviously, anyone should be able to throw a volleyball, no problem, right? But Peter is about to actually do just that. He's about to throw the volleyball when there is another student who gets a radio message about the Vulture having escaped. So Peter, of course, thinks, all right, gotta spring into action as Spidey once again. Gotta, for the sake of my secret identity and for being Spider-Man, for doing the right thing here, my life as Peter Parker, my social life, my credibility, my everything has to take a hit. So here we go again, and he runs off, and and of course, he kind of makes an excuse for, I'm not really feeling well. I got a headache. I'm gonna bail. And Flash, of course, is like, oh, you're being a wimp. Once again, right? Again, it's a rather small thing, but I really do like how we see a lot in these, especially these earlier issues, with Spider-Man here. We see a lot of this interplay where Peter his kind of go-to excuse to get out of things, to be able to become Spider-Man again, is essentially to say that he's tired or he's not feeling well or whatever the case, and it's always something that makes Peter look worse, makes him look like more of a wimp, which at the same time does hide his secret identity anymore, or even better, because if he was feeling fine and he left, then it's kind of like, well, this kind of adds an extra layer of, well, I can't be Spider-Man because, see, I wasn't feeling well when Spider-Man was out there kicking ass. So I think it's actually a relatively clever way to handle it. Although, of course, the excuse of always being sick or tired does kind of get played out after some time. But in any case. Now, in an interesting bit of Spider-Man lore here, we actually have this moment where Peter is getting his web shooters and his camera ready, and he's, talking to himself about how he's now developed these web shooters that can hold multiple capsules of web fluid, so he can just kind of switch them out, kind of like a gun does with bullet rounds or whatever. I don't know anything about guns, but he also talks about how he's able to use. He has his camera ready. It's ready to go. He has it in its case. I think this is where we're going to start seeing him actually using his camera on his belt. We'll get to that a bit later here, but in any case, it's, a lot of these things are very small touches, but I really do like how they do this kind of thing where, we really see this stuff come together. Like, it doesn't just come out of nowhere. There's an explanation for why this costume change happens and why this little, all these little events happen here and there. And that's something that I think that comics really excel at, that a lot of adaptations of comics and such don't really do so well, because they want to move the story along and stuff, which I totally get and I'm cool with. But it's interesting to see the lore reason for why things like this occur, and what actually happened in their universe to inspire these changes that are now so synonymous with these characters that many of us kind of just take for granted these days. So Vulture's out just kind of terrorizing the town. He's got his costume back. He's robbing a bank. He's kind of just terrorizing the citizens, all while avoiding the cops who were chasing him down in a helicopter. But Spidey catches up with him, and Spidey's real confident. He's got his anti-magnetic converter. He's got his camera ready. He's ready to take down Vulture. He's thinking about how he's going to get a ton of money from these pictures. He's going to take down Vulture easy with just a click of the remote, and it's going to send Vulture just hurling down. Well, he does this, and Vulture does, in fact, go spiraling down. What he's doing here, as he thinks to himself and kind of narrates to the audience, if you will, is he's just calling Spidey's bluff. He's acting as if he's falling, because remember, he did develop that he's using new flight tech. So what he's using now, and it wasn't specifically stated, but the tech that he's using now is not able to be affected in the same way that Peter took him down before, because it's not the same kind of tech. It's very different, technology. But, Spidey sees him tumbling down and everything, and he thinks, all right, I got him, when out of nowhere, and I really like this shot, because we have Peter just kind of, looking over the edge, wondering why his spider sense is still going, which, by the way, that's another point. This was yet another moment where Spidey did track down Vulture using his spider sense, and you know how I feel about that, but, it is what it is. So, in any case, and he's, thinking the whole time, he's like, what's happening here? Like, why is my spider sense still going? And then out of nowhere, Vulture just flies up and gives Spidey a good hook. So the two of them are fighting in the air for a bit, as they have done before, and Vulture even kind of monologues to Spidey where he's like, you never expected I would actually improve my flight, and kind of catches Spidey off guard, where Vulture is able to fling him off and send Spidey hurling down through the city, where he, of course, tries to catch himself on a web, but he misses his shot, and by the way that he's falling. Now, again, this is a moment, so I'm a little bit torn on this, because on one hand, I don't like when, and this happens a lot in the early Spider-Man comics, I'll point out when it gets really egregious, but there are a lot of moments where he narrates, like Spidey is thinking what we're already seeing on the page. However, this is a moment, and to me that's extremely redundant. However, this is a moment where, as Spidey is falling, we have this shot where he's thinking to himself how he needs to spin himself in the right way, because he doesn't have time to try shooting another web. He's going to fall, he's going to hit a building, he needs to fall the right way so he doesn't, die, in all honesty. And the way he does this, he makes this like kind of split-second calculation where he's like, all right, I'm either going to, die, right? Or I got to break my fall some way or another, right? And he does, at the cost of breaking his arm. Now, I really like this because, again, I don't normally like that level of specifics when going into these kinds of things. However, I I'm perfectly fine with it for this kind of thing. I'm okay with the, I wouldn't even say over narration, but I'm okay with this kind of thing when it actually, so okay, in my opinion, like, thought bubbles, narration, all that stuff, they should be telling you things that you're not already seeing. I have no issue with things like this. It's specifically when it comes to, again, I'll point out when it gets really bad, but there are some examples where Spidey or another character, I think they do this with Daredevil too. I think it's really a Stan Lee problem, to be honest with you, primarily. But there are a lot of moments where effectively, a character will be thinking everything you're already seeing on the page, and I'm just like, come on, dude. Like, what are we doing? I see it. Like, what are we doing? Yeah. But in any case, because of the way Peter landed, he broke his arm, his right arm, and I do believe that Peter is right-handed. I know I am, and I know how much of a pain that would be if you broke that arm. I broke my left arm back in fourth grade, something like that. Third grade, I think it was, and that was annoying enough as it was. I can't imagine breaking your dominant hand. Like, that would just be insane to me. But that's what happens to Peter here. And we have this moment where, he's once again, he's kind of feeling defeated and everything, similar to how he has before, like when he lost to Doc Ock. Although he's not exactly thinking of throwing in the towel, he's just thinking of how he's going to, hide this and everything, right? And meanwhile, of course, Vulture gets away. But we have this moment here where, Peter returns home, and Aunt May is, she's there. She's like, "Oh, Peter, are you in there? Let's talk," kind of thing. And she's worried about him, as she often is. He's getting home late. He's all these different things. She's like, "Oh, he's so fragile. I'm always worried about him." And in this case, yeah, he is kind of fragile right now. Like, let's be real here. There is this moment as well where, and again, it's these little things, but like, and Peter even kind of comments and thinks to himself about how, if normally, he's not fragile, but like in this case, yeah, he pretty much is. But we have this moment where, again, really subtle, really small thing, but Peter is changing his street clothes, and he mentions how it took half an hour for him to get changed. Now, again, it was a long time ago that I even had my broken arm, so I don't really remember how this kind of thing worked. But yeah, it takes a while. It's not, it's one of those things that we take, like having two working limbs, kind of for granted. You lose access to one of those, and it changes everything. It's absolutely insane. But in any case, Peter is even thinking about how he has to come up with an excuse as to why he has this, right? And the excuse he comes up with, that he gives, because now they basically have to give an excuse to, he has to come up with an excuse for Aunt May, and he has to come up with an excuse for the kids at school, right? So the excuse he gives to Aunt May and the doctor that they make him see, which, makes sense, he's got a broken arm, right, is he heard him playing volleyball. Now, don't get me wrong, you can absolutely break your arm playing volleyball, but I think that this is meant to be kind of a joke in and of itself, because volleyball, it's a soft ball. You don't really think of volleyball as like a tough sport. It's like a fun sport people play on the beach. It's a more kind of leisurely sport to a lot of people. I think that's at least the general consensus. I don't know sports at all, so I'm really talking out of my ass here. It's not the same as, like, I don't know, breaking your arm playing like football or something, which that's actually how I broke my arm. But the doctor does say it's a sprain, it's not completely broken. It should be healed in a few weeks. You just got to keep it in a sling, which is great, and a lot better than my situation, because when I broke my arm, man, it was broken. It wasn't just a sprain. We thought it was a sprain at first, but no, it was broken. And by the way, I want to be clear on this. I'm not saying, oh, I broke it playing football to like sound tough or whatever. No, it wasn't tough at all. I was in the background, and the way somebody threw a football and it hit me like right here on my wrist, just ended up snapping it and breaking my arm. So I don't mean to make it sound like, oh yeah, I broke it playing football because no, I've never, no, absolutely not. But you know, Peter of course has to come up with an excuse for his classmates, or so you'd think, because as soon as he gets back, Flash and the gang are just absolutely teasing him for just putting him through the ringer. Like, oh, how'd you break it? Were you turning how does he phrase it? Like, were you turning too many pages at once, or did you like drop a test tube on it or something? And it's like, bro, like you can see the curiosity in Peter's face here. He's just, but again, I like it because this is one of those moments where again we are seeing that classic conflict between Peter and the life of Peter Parker and the identity of Peter Parker and the life and identity of Spider-Man, where he has to forsake his social status, credibility, his everything as Peter Parker for the sake of keeping Spider-Man's secret identity secret. So again, it's a really I love when we have these moments, and there's a lot of them, especially in these early issues, as we're already seeing here. It really is cool to see, going through a lot of these older issues, how much of the groundwork and how much of just, the mythos and things that we know about Spider-Man, how far back it all goes, that like so much of this has just always been there. I find that just absolutely incredible. And speaking of nice moments like that, we have Peter once again talking to Betty, kind of flirting with her, kind of rizzing her up a little bit. And, she asks her, she's like, oh, what happened? What happened to your arm? And in a genius move, I really do like this moment. Peter's like, listen, do you want to know the truth? All right, I'll tell you the truth. I was fighting the Vulture for my dear life. And she's like, well, ask a silly question. It's like ask a stupid question, get a stupid answer, right? And what I like about that moment is, like, first, the audience knows, he obviously knows, everyone knows, reading this, that, like, obviously, this is, like, that is what happened. Yet, we, of course, have that juxtaposition of him telling the truth is, ironically, what ends up saving his secret identity in this moment here. So, I really like that moment. I think it's really cool. Now, while this is all happening, Vulture has been plotting what his next big heist is going to be. And for some reason, he decides for it to be the Daily Bugle. He thinks to himself how there's a ton of money at the Daily Bugle, and he can go and just rob it, effectively, right? Now, to be fair, yes, that does kind of make sense. I really think this is just just kind of an excuse to make it personal for Peter, of course, right? And kind of shoehorn Vulture and Peter, together here. Shoehorn wouldn't be the right word there, but like, it's kind of forced, but it is what it is. In any case, as JJ calls Peter in and is basically, listen, I really can't pay much for this Vulture picture. I need something more. The man of the hour shows up, and we have this moment. We saw this earlier. I didn't show it in the video here, but we had this moment earlier where Vulture was holding these bank tellers at gunpoint, and now he's holding JJ at gunpoint. I can't think of any piece of media. I don't think the MCU has Vulture doing this. I can't think of any piece of media outside of this where Vulture explicitly is holding people at gunpoint. This is insane. But he's essentially just kind of holding them for ransom. He's like, all right, JJ, you're gonna give me all your money. You're gonna give me all your money or else. And I mean, it really is just such a simple thing. And JJ's like, you can't do that. I'll be ruined. He's like, I don't really care. I want your money. You're gonna he's like, I got the gun. Either you give me your money or bang. you know, and it's kind of I could definitely see even a character like Joker having a moment like that. But I just it's of course, with the two of them arguing, luckily it gives Peter the ability to slip in through the back and you know be Spider-Man again, for lack of a better way to phrase it. I'm not, you know what I mean, change into his Spider-Man costume. Now remember, this is 1962, so they're not just going to have Vulture shoot JJ in cold blood. So of course, Spidey shows up in the nick of time, webs up his gun, and I love a lot of the illustrations we're about to see going forth here, because as Spidey saves JJ and takes on Vulture, they run throughout the Bugle. But what I really like about this is we just have all of these panels where we have all of these moments where, as Peter is chasing Vulture throughout the Bugle, you see he's making sure to keep his arm tucked as if he's wearing the brace still. Now, he isn't wearing the brace anymore because he knows that if Peter has a brace, Spidey can't also have a brace because that's going to give the game away. But it's just panel after, like, if you pick this issue up and read it yourself, you'll see just panel after panel of him having his arm like this. It's such a great attention to detail, and I can't stress it enough. But they fight their way through a printing press where Peter almost gets crushed by the printer. I'm going to be honest, I don't really know how that works, but he mentions how if he hits a roller, he's done for, and I don't know what that means, but even the way that the comic kind of lays it out here, which again, recommend you actually check it out if you're interested. I don't really get it, but okay, so I tried looking it up and I really can't find anything on it. I'm guessing it has something to do with just how the machines operated. I don't know, something could have crushed him or something, whatever. That's not really the point. The point is, they're fighting through and they eventually make their way out of the building. And once they make it outside, Vulture's got Spidey by his hand and he's like, all right, I've got you. I'm going to kill you. I've got you right where I want you. And Spidey's like, yeah, you know what? I do too. And he webs up his wing, which Vulture's like, what the hell? You've doomed us both. We're both going to die. And Spidey's like, he says, well, who wants to live forever? Which, that is just such an incredible line. It's like, yeah, you know what? Maybe we will die. Oh, well, dude. But in actuality, of course, they're not going to die, because we have a moment here, and you guys know how I feel about this. Spidey, gets Vulture's kind of, arms, loves them up, all that stuff, right? And, you might think, well, how are they going to make it? Now, if you're familiar with the adaptation and when they did this kind of thing in Spectacular Spider-Man, he just kind of webbed himself across buildings and, swung like he normally would while holding Vulture, right? Which is a perfectly fine way to do this. I think that works just fine. However, you guys know how I feel about the turning his webs into different things and all that. The paddles in the issue 6, the baseball bat when he fought the Fantastic Four, all these different things, right? Well, once again, he uses his webbing to use it and turn it into a parachute. This isn't the most egregious of things to turn his webbing into, but I still don't really like it. Now, points for creativity on both, Spidey's and Stan and Steve's part. He essentially hooks the webbing to Vulture's his back, and just kind of just sends him down like a package on a parachute, and just kind of makes his way through. Again, with that attention to detail with the art, we still have all of these incredible moments where, I was going to say Vulture, where Peter is holding his arm like it's an embrace, because he's still protecting it, and he's still, again, it's just absolutely incredible attention to detail. I love it. Now, as Peter's about to leave, JJ stops him and he's like, "Hey, wait a minute! I want you to know that I hold you personally responsible for everything." And the two of them are just, kind of going off, where JJ's just ranting, really just to rant. I think he just likes the sound of his own voice. And Spidey's just kind of jeering him back. He's like, "What are you, professional nut?" Like, just all this like back and forth kind of thing happening here. And I really like this moment. And Spidey ends it just by webbing up his mouth, and there's a moment here where he's like, "All right, listen, I'm gonna shut you up for at least an hour." That's gonna shut you up for at least an hour. And we had that moment before where Peter webbed up JJ's mouth, or sorry, where he webbed up his he webbed him where he was like stuck to his chair. His pants at least were stuck to his chair. And we had mentioned, or we saw that was more than an hour. So because of that, this is the first time again, these little things of the lore and stuff. This is the first time I think we're seeing where the webbing only lasting an hour comes into play at all in the comics here. But many of you who know this story know this moment we're coming to, and this is just incredible, because as JJ is quiet for an hour, the Bugle's a mess, Betty's trying to, kind of clean up some stuff, and Peter finds her behind a desk, she was hiding, and they start talking about all kind of different things, and my man is just absolutely rizzing up Betty here, to the point where where he's effectively like, let's just enjoy the silence, let's just keep talking, let's just chill, let's just talk, let's just enjoy each other's company here. Because she asked him, he's like, "Where are you?" He's like, "Oh, I was hiding in the closet, I'm not really the heroic type," all these different things, right? And she's like, "I appreciate that you're honest with who you are. You don't pretend to be something you're not." All these different things are talking, and Peter brings up this line. He's like, you gotta cool it with that perfume, otherwise I might tell you about everything going on. Because she's like, you've got some kind of joke, something that's going on that's all your, that's all yours. And he does, his secret identity. And he's like, "Well, if you don't chill out that perfume, I might actually tell you." And like, man, he's just like risen her up so much. And again, we have this moment here, this ending panel, where as they're getting closer and everything, she's like, "What'll Jameson say?" Because they're taking this time off, they're not working, they're not anything, right? And he's like, and his response is just like really smooth, especially for the 60s here. "Nothing, baby, for at least an hour." Because of course, yeah, the webbing's gonna go away, after an hour. It's not important how he knows that. It's not important that he's correct, that she knows he's correct or thinks he's correct or anything. But just, my man's got game. And I talked about, of course, the problematic age gap between Peter and Betty before. And I really think if you just aged Betty down a little bit, it wouldn't be an issue. Like, or you aged Peter up, maybe. Like I said, he's, he could be 18 in his senior year, or she's, 18 just out of high school. I think it works where she's 18 or 19 just out of high school, and he's like 18 in his senior year, something like that, right? But she could have just gone to a different school, just gotten out of college, in college, whatever the case, right? But there are ways you could still do this kind of thing. A lot of people just kind of throw away this relationship, these days, to the point where there's even in my favorite Spectacular Spider-Man, they kind of make fun of the whole thing, where we'll get to it way later, but effectively, she does want to go out with him at first, and then Aunt May's kind of like, "Yeah, aren't you like too old for him?" And he's like, "Yeah, I know, but like, I wanted to kind of just be nice to him and stuff." And she turns him down. She's like, "I'm too old for you," all this stuff, right? But hey, he ends up going to the dance with MJ later, so that's that'll come way later. I really like this issue. And I like this. I like the ending of this issue. That is, of course, the end of The Amazing Spider-Man issue number 7. This was, I believe, the first time that we've seen the return of a villain. Yeah, we have yet to see a villain actually properly return to this point. And, you know, like I said, I think I really like the angle with the broken arm. I think that's great. I love how we really saw a lot of that thing where he's sacrificing his social credibility as Peter Parker for the sake of his secret identity as Spider-Man. I really like that we have that. I really like that we have, the way that like he broke his arm and now he has to hide it, and and again the attention to detail in those panels by Steve Ditko of him just making sure that Peter has his arm hung as if it was in a sling, even though it's not. As he's Spider-Man, is just incredibly well done. I really like all of that, and yeah, I really enjoy this whole thing. And man, again, just his game with Betty here toward the end there is just amazing. It really is good. I think that my only real issues with this are the kind of ham-fistedness, if you will, of Vulture. How he kind of just got out because he just made new technology, whatever that means. How he got out of jail that way, or prison rather, as well as how he, just kind of happened to be, not just happened to be at the Bugle, but went after them because he thinks JJ has a lot of money, when it's like, dude, what do you, like, there are more things you could, but whatever. I feel like that was kind of forced. But other than all that, oh, and of course I don't like the web parachute. But other than that, no, this was a fantastic issue. This was a very well done issue. Once again, of course, the art was incredibly well done. Yeah, there was that moment. Well, actually, there weren't really any moments of like overly verboseness that I remember either. This was just a really great issue, just all the way through. So, yeah, no, this is fantastic. So, yeah, no, I highly recommend checking this out wherever you can find it and giving it a read, because it's definitely worth it. I know I say that about all these, but like if there's ever one we come across where I'm like, you don't really need to read this, then I'll let you know. Like I'm consuming all this content and doing these rambling reviews for you guys, but like if there's something that I don't think is worth like reading or watching or whatever, I'll let you know. But yeah, in any case, and as always, these are just my thoughts. Let me know what yours are in the comments down below. Subscribe and ring the bell to stay up to date. Leave a like if you like, and if not, I hope you find something to do like. Later, guys. Peace and love.